What's going on, people? NGS back again for another video. Welcome back to another episode of the Real Talk Reviews. Today we are going to be discussing the Amazing Spider-Man movie. Now I can already tell that this is going to be a pretty damn long video, so accompany me on this journey. I've got some good old bottled water. Like I said, this is the Real Talk Review, so it's nice, laid back, nonchalant, nothing too serious. Nothing too serious, like the Raimi movies. Troll! Anyway, I digress. This review, for the most part, will be spoiler-free. It's going to be set up into two separate parts. The main review will have no spoilers whatsoever, but the second part, which I will give a signal right before I do it, I will be talking about some of the spoilers from the movie as well as some other things related to the movie, but that does not necessarily pertain to the review. So if you're just here for the review, just don't worry. If you haven't seen the movie, I won't spoil anything. So let's begin, shall we? Now, as you guys know, I was eagerly anticipating the Amazing Spider-Man movie ever since Sony announced that the film series would be rebooted. I believe it was around 2.5 years ago. And just a quick note before we start, for people who are writing reviews on the movie and taking off points simply because it is a reboot and then going off on tangent to a rant on Hollywood and how they have no original ideas, so they have to keep remaking all the old shit that came before, yeah, you don't take off points of something simply because it's a reboot. You have to judge said thing on its own merits. You know, I've seen this countless times with the Spider-Man film. People are taking off points because it is a reboot. No reason why, just because it is a reboot. That is complete bullshit, and that's ridiculous. The whole discussion on whether you thought the film series should have been rebooted or not been rebooted should have been handled some time ago in the past 2.5 years. And that's not me being a fanboy of Spider-Man, that's just the cold hard facts. How would you feel if they came out with, let's say, your favorite video game franchise and it was a complete reboot of the series and I said it sucks because it's a reboot? Not giving any reasons whatsoever why, nothing about the gameplay, nothing about the visuals, just because it's a reboot, it sucks. I digress. What did I think about the movie? Plain and simple, pun intended, I thought it was amazing. As a Spider-Man fan, I could not be any more happy with how they handled this film. One of the biggest things that really ticked me off with the Raimi movies was how they rushed Peter Parker's origin story. As you know, that's very important, it's very integral to his character, and they just seemed to put it out there and then rush it so we can get to him swinging in the city as Spider-Man. I really didn't like that at all because there's a lot of development going on with Peter Parker's character. It's not just this nerdy guy in high school gets bit by the spider, uncle dies, he becomes this hero. No, it's not just that. There's a lot dealing with the emotional side of Peter Parker as well as what comes afterwards. It's about this kid learning how to exist in this world with being an outcast, having these new powers that make him even more of an outcast, being personally responsible for the death of his uncle, who was more or less a father figure to him, and having to save the world from bad guys. Yeah, there's just so much depth going on behind there, but I'm not going to be a broken record. If you want to check out that depth, then go read the comics or watch some of the episodes of Spectacular Spider-Man or the 90s series, etc., etc. But that was the one thing the Raimi series really lacked. It was no longer about a kid dealing with all these problems in high school. They sort of grew Peter Parker up to be an adult, and that kind of defeats almost the entire purpose of Spider-Man, because it was about this kid going through all these problems, which is what made him so relatable. He's imperfect, and like I said, he's going through all of these problems. In this movie, they actually went back and they took the time to develop that. Peter Parker's character is in line with how he is in the comics. He is like, I kind of find this funny that people are saying that he's no longer a nerd anymore because he doesn't dress like one. Guys, please come out of the 1960s. We're not in that time anymore where nerds are classified based off what they wear. Nerds don't wear pocket protectors, have their little pens right here, wear suspenders, and walk around with those big-ass goofy glasses. We've kind of evolved from there. People have learned to dress better. Not all nerds dress like that. I mean, maybe some do, but that stereotype has been so over-exaggerated in the media that it's not true. And simply because Peter Parker is not the stereotypical look of a nerd doesn't make him any less of one, because what is a nerd? A nerd is somebody who has a great understanding of a certain subject field. And people have associated that with schoolwork, and that's why people are nerds. But there are skateboard nerds, there are politic nerds, there are video game nerds, you know what I'm saying? Nerds can be anybody. It's not just restricted to schoolwork. And that's where the stereotype came from. But yeah, Peter Parker still is a nerd in this movie. He is definitely a loner. He is an outcast. He's reserved. He keeps to himself, just like he was in the comics. He's bullied by people. And I've seen people complain that, oh, if he's not bullied by everybody in the school, then the message isn't there. What? Why does this entire school have to be against this one kid? That's pretty damn ridiculous. He's bullied by Flash. It's clear that other people at the school don't like him. You know, that's the message right there. I mean, people are nitpicking the shit out of the movie, but as far as Peter Parker's character is concerned, his character is handled great, and Andrew Garfield does a fantastic job at making it more believable and more relatable, from his mannerisms, the way he moves, the way he talks, the way he, presents himself around people of authority, like people higher up. He's nervous around them like any kid in that situation would be. Very believable aspect. And when he finally gets bit by the spider is when hilarity ensues, because he's learning how to use his powers. And it's funny when he first wakes up and he hit the clock and it's broken and he's trying to get the toothpaste out and it's going crazy and nothing is working his way. It's those little tiny scenes that make me love the character even more. The definite theme of the movie this time around that we're trying to do is make Spider-Man more grounded, more relatable, and less campy. Because the Raimi series was notorious for being campy, because you have Sam Raimi, who is known for having camp in a lot of his movies, mix that with a superhero, which by default is going to have some camp in it, and boom! You've got an explosion wave of camp. And for better or for worse, it really didn't work out. In some cases it was over the top, that it was just like that. But yeah, they definitely got rid of the majority of that. It's actually more serious. You can take this Spider-Man seriously this time around. Scenes this time around are done with more, how should I say this? There's more meaning behind it. Yes, this is more or less the same story. It's based off the same source material, people, so of course it's going to have the kid getting bit by the spider and becoming Spider-Man. That's a given. Those are iconic things that you cannot take away from Spider-Man. They couldn't have rushed the origin story within 5 minutes, because you want to know what would happen? Number one, that would confuse the audience, because if they're just rushing in 5 minutes, some may think it's Spider-Man 4. Yes, there are people who are that dumb. And number two, The Incredible Hulk did that. The Incredible Hulk 2008 with Edward Norton. They did the origin story in 5 minutes, and people assumed that it was a sequel to Ang Lee's Hulk. And it wasn't until DVD sales when people were like, oh wow, this has nothing to do with Ang Lee's Hulk, it's a reboot, let me check this out, it's awesome! So they had to go back and tell the origin story right this time around, not only for the sake of marketing and for the sake of, less confusion, but for the sake of the character, because it is iconic and it's his characters. Like, when it comes to Peter Parker, that's one of the more important parts of the entire comic book series, his origin story. It's not something so simple that you can rush within like a 5-minute intro while the credit is going on. You know what I'm saying? So it was handled great. The way I look at the origin story is, it's like this film is not really so much all about Spider-Man, but it's all about Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man. If you want a comparison, look at Batman Begins and Iron Man. They're not necessarily about Batman and Iron Man fighting all the bad guys. It's about Bruce Wayne and Tony Stark coming into those characters, learning to be those characters, and they were great. They handled the origin awesomely. Awesomely is a new word. Is awesomely a word? Go check it out if it's in the dictionary. I don't know. But the origin story is not meant to be something rushed. It's meant to be developed, and it's supposed to set the groundwork for future films, which is why The Dark Knight was good. Well, I can't say the same about Iron Man 2, but you get what I'm saying. The origin was already laid down, so going forward with a sequel, they could accomplish so much more. Like I said, Batman, they succeeded. Iron Man, not so much, but that was due to Marvel rushing it, because they're like, oh my god, money! They definitely should have taken their time on that one. Some may complain that we've seen it before, but the way in which we actually see the scenes, they're done with a lot more meaning and emotional depth. For example, Uncle Ben's death. When Uncle Ben dies, you feel for the character. Because there's so much chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Martin Sheen. In all the scenes that they're in, it's just like you can really feel what is going on here between this parent figure and this child who's going through these problems. and when he finally, for lack of a better phrase, kicks the bucket, it's saddening. When I was in the theater, this is around, I forgot how long it was in until when he died, I'm not sure, but rest assured, there were half the audience was in tears when it happened, because you actually see it happen. It's not just, oh, well, he died because the police said that it was a carjacker. So yeah, you see it happen here. And there's so much emotion in the scenes. Martin Sheen and Andrew Garfield are critically acclaimed actors, so for them to bring their experience from their previous films into this was just fantastic. Now, moving on to the other members of the cast, besides Andrew and Martin, who do a fantastic job, Emma Stone plays Gwen Stacy, which, as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of Emma Stone. She's great. Gwen Stacy is a lovable character. They definitely went above and beyond to make us care for her because of what will happen in a eventual, inevitable sequel. You guys know what's going to happen if they are doing what I think they are doing. Mark Webb did say certain iconic elements have to be honored. So it will happen eventually. And if you play the tie-in game, the Amazing Spider-Man game, they do hint at that even more. But yeah, Emma Stone, can't really complain much. She's competent, she's smart, she's attractive, she's lovable. None of the qualities that existed in Kirsten Dunst when she played Mary Jane. Oh, she was just there for eye candy and, I'm capture beater, save me, save me. 3 straight movies of being captured. What the F? Ugh. And then we move on to Dennis Leary, who plays Captain Stacy. Dennis Leary's a boss. I don't have to say anything else. And Rhysy Fonz as Kirk Connors. Again, like Gwen Stacy, I was finally glad to see a villain done justice. Can you believe this is the first time we have seen a Spider-Man villain done justice on film? First time without it being completely changed or made into the Saturday morning cartoon villain that was Green Goblin. His motivation is definitely there. He was this guy who wants to create a world without weakness, and he creates this serum, and due to complications and problems of being backed in the corner, he tests it on himself, and his mind begins to get twisted and warped, and the dream that he wants to achieve, he goes about it, but by unethical means. I thought that for his character, it worked out great. Sally Field is Aunt May. I thought that, like everybody else, she was more natural. She wasn't in the movie as much as I wanted her to be, because I love Aunt May, and since they were basing the majority of this movie off the Ultimate series, am I the only one who thinks that Ultimate Aunt May is a BAMF? Am I the only one who thinks that? Please comment down below if you think she's a BAMF. I thought that they were going to draw inspiration for her from here, but not so much. So I could say she was kind of weak, but if they put more of her in the sequel, I'm not going to object to that. And if they base it off the Ultimate version, I'll be like, fuck yeah, awesome! It is the same story in a sense, but there's so much more meaning behind it. Characters are developed a lot better. It's more relatable, it's more grounded, it's more realistic in the sense that you care for these characters and the situations that they are in. And they definitely laid down the groundwork for an even better sequel, which is what I am anticipating when it comes out. I believe 2014 summer is when it is set. So we're all going to have to wait in to see The Amazing Spider-Man 2 to see if they indeed go above and beyond, or if they fall flat on their ass like Iron Man 2 did. So we'll just have to see on that. So my overall recommendation, go see The Amazing Spider-Man. It is far more true to the source material. They've gotten character motivations down right. They've gotten almost everything right. And just point blank from a film standpoint, it's fantastic. Cinematography is awesome. Special effects are great. Seeing it in IMAX 3D was interesting to say the least. The 3D wasn't in your face popping out OMG, WTF, BBQ, Resistance reference. But it was good enough that you get an enjoyment out of it if that makes any sense. Now, moving on to other things that don't really necessarily affect the review, but it's something I need to talk about. Numerous critics have claimed that the film is far too dark for Spider-Man and it's a Dark Knight ripoff. I actually find that kind of funny, considering the fact that Dark Knight did not in any way, shape, or form start this whole dark comic book film thing. I think it's funny that, oh, if you have a film and it's comic book based and it's dark, it's a Dark Knight ripoff. Well, by that logic, The Dark Knight's a ripoff of Sin City, man. Come on. It's just stupid. The reason why is, like I said, Spider-Man is a lot more grounded and realistic in the sense that the scenes are taken a lot more seriously. It's not over-the-top campy, let's get to the action. You know what I'm saying? It's far less cheesy, all that junk. And since it is more grounded and serious, the scenes in which you have Kirk Connors and the Lizard are appropriate. They make sense. You know? Spider-Man has always been about part drama, and as you know, drama in some cases can get pretty dark. It's kind of surprising, especially if these are the same people who apparently have seen the cartoons for Spider-Man, which have had dark elements in there before. And if you guys consider this to be dark, go read stuff dealing with Kraven, for Christ's sake. That's dark. Just because something is set at nighttime for the majority of the movie does not mean that it's over the top and brooding and dark, and all our characters will speak like this. Come on now, people. We're older than that. Oh god, did that fuck up my vocal cords? Oh, bullet to the vocal cords! Or arrow to the vocal cords. Now, moving on to some of the spoilers in The Amazing Spider-Man. Spoilers now! Kirk Connors does indeed survive at the end of the film. That was something that I was really, really glad that they did. Considering the fact that in the Raimi films, the thing about the Raimi films is they do feel disconnected from one another. It doesn't feel like there's this, this overarching storyline. It's just, let's wrap up all this stuff in one film and think nothing of it and go on to the next one. So he does survive, and he does appear in the video game as well. So what they do with his character, we'll have to wait and see in the potential sequel or maybe the third film. It's going to be interesting nonetheless, since they finally kept a villain alive. Captain Stacy does die at the hands of the Lizard, and he does find out Peter Parker's identity, or Spider-Man's identity. That was interesting. It wasn't something that I was expecting them to do. However, when you do see the scene of Peter Parker looking at Captain Stacy, he's like, Parker, I'm like, that's it, he has to die. He has to die. Nobody would know, because if Captain Stacy knows that his daughter is dating Spider-Man, he would call off the search, more or less. That, or continue the search just to pester Peter. I don't know. That was kind of something that was annoying because of how it happened in the comics, because it added a lot of emotional drama between Peter and Gwen. But it's not something that, like, oh my god, it's freaking ruined the continuity. It's interesting how they're going to play this out, because if they're doing what I think they're doing, they can still handle it well, but they have literally this much to work with without going overboard. So, yeah, like how they're going to handle Kirk Connors in future film series, we'll have to see how they're going to handle this emotional drama between Peter and Gwen and all that junk. We'll just have to see. Hopefully it's not just an afterthought. Now moving on to something that kind of ticked me off while I was watching the movie. I was one of the people who kept up with the film through its, when it first got announced, watching all the trailers, TV shots, etc., production photos. And something that really did tick me off was that they made such a big deal regarding the parents in the film, yet they really weren't in it. Now I know that Mark Webb did say that there are certain things that they are not going to be explaining in just one movie. They're going to take time to plant them, and then they're going to bloom in later films, which is alright for the parents and for the carjacker, because it's going to lead him to something bigger, which is why they still showed that he cared about them in the film, because they were on his wall and the camera panned and saw it. So it is going to happen. However, there were numerous lines in the trailer that weren't in the film, mainly in regards to Kirk Connors talking about Peter's parents, in addition to Dr. Ratha, who's played by Irfan Khan, you know, the Indian guy, in addition to him saying, like, do you think what happened to you, Peter, was an accident? And then you hear him very softly saying, do you have any idea what you really are? I thought that they were going to change Peter Parker's origin, like how he would get his powers, which isn't too much of a big deal to me, per se, if it was genetic. However, the reason why I bring this up is because there were production photos of the sewers with Dr. Ratha there, and he encountered Kirk Connors, and Kirk Connors as the Lizard, he, you know, grabbed his neck and he was about to kill him with his tail, and then you see him holding a gun, and you see Peter Parker coming down there, and then that's where, you know, Kirk Connors utters the line, if you want the truth about your parents, Peter, come get it. That wasn't in the movie at all. I think there was this huge subplot going on that was omitted from the film like at the last minute. I don't know if it's me or anyone else who has caught on to this, but it's just kind of awkward to see like a lot of scenes from the trailers that weren't in the movie that actually seemed to be important. I believe when they first announced that Irfan Khan would be in the movie, he would be playing, I believe, Proto-Goblin. So maybe he had a bigger role, maybe he was a sub-villain, or maybe it's the groundwork for him to become Proto-Goblin in the second movie. I'm not sure, but I think they... Like, even if you look in the trailer, like when Dr. Ratha is in the car, in one of the first trailers they released, it shows the lizard's hand coming from up top and grabbing him. Like, you literally see it grabbing him, whereas in the other trailers it just, you know, grabs him from the side and it misses. I really do think something happened along the way from the film that they felt like, you know what, this is too much. Maybe there was an extra like 30 minutes that were cut. I don't know, this is all just speculation. But it does seem to hold some, you know, some merit. We'll just have to wait and see. Maybe they're going to release a director's cut on Blu-ray, which actually, I'd say that's pretty damn shady if they're going to say, get the exclusive director's cut of The Amazing Spider-Man featuring half an hour of footage not seen in theaters. I think that's a big slap in the face to people who saw it in the theaters, who were left wanting something more. I mean, the film itself is great. The adaptation part is awesome. I just think that we were kind of gypped out of something more as far as the story is concerned. Maybe they're saving that for the sequel and they're rewriting it to work all that stuff in, but it would have added a lot more to the mystery if they gave Dr. Ratha so much more to do. You know, because this is all about his parents, and maybe the critic score would have gone higher because they do add more mystery to it. I'm not sure. Please comment below if you've actually experienced this, because I'm kind of pissed off right now at Sony for doing this, if this is true. But anyway, I digress. That was my review for The Amazing Spider-Man, people. I hope you enjoyed it. Overall, I thought the film was great. It's a much closer adaptation to the comics. They definitely set the grounding for an even better Spider-Man film sequel, so we're just going to have to wait and see how they're going to play it out. Hopefully Sony doesn't get ahead of themselves and go crazy like they did with Spider-Man 3. But, yeah, they definitely have something here to work with. I definitely could see Spidey showing up in the Avengers because, as you know, Marvel owns more of the Spider-Man film license now than before, where they had no say. So we could see a deal in the works for him to appear in, like, the Avengers 2, whenever that comes out, like 2015, 2016. But for the time being, I think we need at least one more Spider-Man film to develop the character, and then we could see him tie in with the Avengers and then maybe do something with Tony Stark. I just generally think that they could make this happen, but it's got to be taken very carefully, handled with the utmost care, or else it's going to become a clusterfuck. So, hey, me for now, I'm NGS signing out. Thank you for watching another episode of Real Talk Review, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.